So, hello everyone. This is Tark. I'm Kanishk. With me is my co-host Devansh. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Madhukeshwar Desai. He's the National Vice President of the BJYM, the BJP's youth wing, and he's also the CEO of MCIA, and a lot of other credentials to be added as well. Madhukeshwar ji, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? How would you describe yourself if this is not an apt description?
Normal tax-paying citizen, and more than the sum of everything else that you read out.
Wonderful.
An interesting fact about Madhukeshwar ji is that Madhukeshwar ji was the youngest national vice president of the BJYM, and he's also an avid fan of sports. He's serving as the chairperson of the badminton club in Bengaluru, if I'm right, sir.
No, actually, I'm the vice president for the Maharashtra Basketball Association, and I'm one of the directors of the Dravid Padkon Center for Sports Excellence. It's the largest private sports facility in the country.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here today.
The lesser known fact about me is that I also play the guitar. Or I used to play the guitar that much more.
Did you have a jam session with Milan Deora?
If he invites me for it, I wouldn't mind. But no, the lesser known fact is that I had long hair and played for the college band.
Oh, you had hippie phase, huh?
Like every good law student.
So, Devansh, I guess we can start with the first question. So, when do you go with?
So, Madhukeshwar ji, as we all know, the country went through a second wave of the pandemic, and that was very brutal for us. But you accomplished some really impressive work with the BJY. Could you please tell us more about it?
I'll start off by saying, the pandemic has been an extremely challenging time, not just for us, but all of humanity across the entire world. What we did was a very small part. 99.9% of all the work was done by frontline workers. We just assisted and helped out in whatever little way that we could. I'll broadly categorize it into two parts because the pandemic is stretched for so long now. During the first lockdown, we had Poonam Mahajanji was our president, and we started this hashtag called BJYM Cares on Twitter because we had so many people that were reaching out to us, and Twitter is a great form for people to actually reach out to you. And we sort of connected as many people as we could with the states. And at that point in time, the requirements were quite clear. They either wanted food rations, or they wanted food packets of food, or they were stuck in a place and sort of couldn't get out. That was primarily what the requirements were. And what BJYM did was we connected our entire network across the entire country. And we reached out to as many people as we possibly could. We gave them, if my memory serves me right, we distributed about 18 lakh food packets and about 56 lakh ration kits across the entire country to help as many people. And there were a few emergencies. We couldn't help everyone, of course. It was very challenging. There was this one individual from Assam, from outside Guwahati, who reached out to us. Unfortunately, his relative passed away in Sanand in Gujarat. And there was no way for either him to get to Sanand or for the body to come to Assam. So we reached out to the administration and we somehow managed to get an ambulance to take the body from Gujarat all the way to Assam and then, of course, send the ambulance back. And those are small victories that we sort of managed to achieve. I know it sounds strange now, but during the peak of the lockdown, it was very, very challenging to do. And there were a lot of Yuva Morcha Karyakartas that put their might behind it just to ensure that one family could say goodbye, and that is something that we did during the first lockdown. During the second lockdown, during the second wave, rather, it was a completely different set of demands and completely different set of requirements, and the veracity and the intensity with which the second wave hit was unimaginable, honestly. And at that point in time, by the time we had Tejasvi Suryaji, who was the president of the youth wing. And what we did was we did something quite interesting at that point in time. The scarcest resource was actually doctors. And what we realized was people were getting sick. Majority of people can actually be treated at home. I got COVID. I had a severe bout of COVID, but I got treated at home. I didn't have to go to a hospital. But what was happening if I could categorize it in such, the challenge is a lot of people, either when they say medical advice, they speak to their grandmother or they look at WhatsApp. Or of course, you go to WebMD and realize that you're going to die of cancer, regardless of what you have. So that's not good medical advice. So besides the people that actually needed hospitalization, you had a whole host of people that could have been treated at home, were not getting basic advice and basic care, and they were ending up at the hospital either out of fear or out of bad care. So what Tejasvi decided to do was, he said, we'll bring an amalgamation of startups and of course put the strength of the Yuva Morcha together to bring the scarcest resource, which is doctors. So we got 1,600 MBBS doctors from across the entire country. And we got Practoswast and a bunch of other startups in the medical space to handle the back end, because that is not something that the party can actively do. And we created a round robin telephone system to basically connect all these doctors with as many people as we could. But at the back end, as an interesting fact, you can't just connect doctors with patients. So what you have to do as an intermediary, we have to verify that they're actually doctors. Otherwise, we'll have Kanisqa and Devansh add a doctor before there and give advice to everyone else. And that's not something we take lightly, right? Everything that we do has to be done correctly and has to be done well. So these 1,600 doctors were onboarded by Practo and Swast. By that, I mean, we had an entire team along with our Yuva Morcha Karyakartas as well that called up these doctors, took all their details, made sure that their MBBS certificates were verified, onboarded them, and only after that could they actually consult with patients. So we launched our national president, both Yuva Morcha as well as the main party, Naddaji and Tejasviji, launched the BJY National Medical Helpline. And we did it in a whole host of languages, not just in English and Hindi. And it was, to my mind, decently successful. We had over 6,000 consults in a matter of just 1 month. And just to close the loop, which was an interesting conversation we had, because when you speak to entrepreneurs and individuals from the startup community, it's a different conversation as you would with, say, someone with a political background. So once you get a call and you keep the phone, what do you do then? Right, you need to close the loop. So in order to close the loop, what we did was an SMS would go to the same individual along with the details of the BJY state helpline. So if that individual wanted to, needed any help whatsoever, he could actually reach out to the state helpline, and then we would on the ground go out and help him. So two very different aspects of what we did during the first lockdown and of course the second wave, but both great learning experiences. And of course the entire team worked together across the entire country to make it a success to some extent.
It's honestly inspiring work, sir. I had the honor to meet Tejasvi ji during my Delhi visit right now. I told him, and I'm telling you also, one thing, like the work you did was very commendable, but the one thing that I really personally appreciated, because it's a cause that I am very passionate about, is mental health. And I know for a fact that BJYM and the office of Tejasvi Surya ji ran a mental health helpline for people who were stuck during COVID times, who were feeling helpless. And that was a really commendable step towards something that is really needed in the nation. I really liked it, and I had the honor to meet him, and I congratulated him on it. I congratulate him. So on a lighter note, during just like before I came here, I was in my class, and they were calling students out, and they were asking people, "What is your one memory of this person?" The moment I walked down to sit on the chair, my entire class chimed in with a mental health policy. That is how well known I am. That is how I am known for my passion towards this topic. So my question to you was that India came out with a mental health policy in 2014, which was the first time that an Indian government had come out with a policy that was focused on mental health, which was very commendable. And it came out under Narendra Modi ji, who realized the need for it. But sir, with the coming of pandemic and with the growing concerns in the youth especially, the policy is not competent enough at this point to deal with the problem. So do we see the government coming up with a more efficient and a more proactive solution to the same?
So I'll address it with two parts. One is a social aspect, and the other is a policy and governance aspect of it. I'll start off by saying that every solution for every problem isn't legislation or policy. You can't change society. You can't change perspectives only by passing a law. I think it is a collaborative effort to ensure that you sort of reach policy goals as well. So in terms of in terms of the act, to my mind, one of the most important things with regards to the act is something that that is less spoken about, is that somebody with a mental illness should be treated equal to a person with a physical illness. While people say this, in the last iteration of the act, which was last passed in 1987, did not take this aspect into play. Another reason why this is put into play and why this is so important is it gets missed out again, is for insurance cover. Now, if mental illness is not treated on par with physical illness, then the chances of you getting medical cover for it is slim to none. So under the Ayushman Bharat scheme now, you do get, for certain aspects of mental health, not for everything, for certain aspects of mental health now, you do get insurance coverage as well. But what this policy does is it enables you, or it enables the government to further act on it, to build a mental health, to build mental health awareness, not just at a social level, but also at a policy level across different status. So that is with the policy part of it. On the social part of it, Devansh, I'm glad that you're so passionate about it. It's something that I think is extremely important, and it gets spoken about, but it gets spoken about in silos. You have individuals that speak very passionately about it on certain pages, say on Instagram and on Twitter and maybe Facebook. But to a larger swath of India, I wouldn't say it is taboo, but it is something that, in my limited experience, gets brushed under the carpet. It isn't something that is, for example, treated on par with physical illness. That's not something that you do. But unfortunately, with mental health, sometimes that does happen. The other aspect of it, of course, is the number of trained psychiatrists and psychologists that we have. I agree with you that number should exist, that number should increase, and we should encourage it, and we should encourage it further. But as young people and as someone who works actively in the Yuva Morcha as well, besides from the government, I think we can do a lot. So easy, for example, to say, yes, we should have more psychiatrists. Yes, we should have more hospitals. Yes, we should have more policy. But you should also look at how many people are actually willing to go take treatment. How many people are willing or open to counseling? How many people are willing to look at it and say that it's not a stigma to say that I'm either depressed or that I've come to realize that I have a mental illness. So, I think that's the first step that is important to take. And I think all of us can play a very important role with that.
Absolutely.
I really loved your answer.
Yeah.
It's a refreshing take. I mean, you don't really get to hear this from a lot of, I guess, new age politicians. I mean, and it's something I would really like to have right out there in the public space. So before I go ahead, I just had another question. I'm sorry, it's a little off from the mental health journey. Yeah, so in Surat, so I'd heard this, I read this in one of the interviews which journalists had taken about the book. So in Surat, there were some demands from the local people there to rename the airport to Morarji Desai International Airport. And they have been sending a lot of requests to push for it. And you refused to do this each time, quite interestingly. So could you walk us through the process behind your decision?
I think to the last count, I think about 30 or 32 organizations have formally written to me to take up the issue, if I remember correctly. Okay, so I'll walk you through this. If you look at if you look at our country today and the number of institutions that are named after the Nehru Gandhi family, right? The institutions, the awards, pretty much everything else is named after them. More than 900 to my count. In every healthy democracy, people want to honor their leaders, their visionaries, and of course across the world, if you go, you'll find enough number of institutions named after them. But it's only in theocracies and dictatorships will you find that every institution is named after only either one individual or one family. And it's important to understand why that is. The reason that that dictators or theocrats do that is to explain to the average citizen that public money is their family money, and all institutions belong to that particular family or that particular individual, and that they have complete control, and they're above the country, and they're above laws, and they're above everything else. Right. So I personally have a fundamental issue. I think it's extremely undemocratic to have these many institutions named after one individual and one family. I mean, in a country of 1.3 billion achievers, not with any other adjective. Are you telling me there isn't anyone that has done anything else of merit for anything, including naming things like Indira Gandhi National Fountain in Bangalore? There's a fountain also that's named after her. So that's of course on one part of it. When you come to Morarji Bhai, Morarji Desai is by far one of the most prominent political individuals in India's political history. People remember him as prime minister and for a few other things, but he's played a long role from 1930 right up to his death in 1990. What he strove for, he was the antithesis of Nehru first and the antithesis of Indira Gandhi. He's written this down in his autobiography as well. He truly believed that Nehru was too obsessed with how history will remember him and him being considered a great individual. That was sort of his focus, and all his policies and all his actions sort of led to that. And Indira Gandhi, of course, couldn't see beyond her two children. And he strove during his life to be the antithesis of this. And post his life as well, he's the only prime minister that does not have a samadhi in Delhi, who does not have a memorial in Delhi and does not have anything unlike other prime ministers. When he died, he said, "I don't want to go back to Delhi. I was born in Gujarat. I'll have a small samadhi in Gujarat, and next to Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, there's a small place called Abhay Ghat, where you have the former prime minister's samadhi, unlike others." After he passed away, he donated everything that he had, which is the Bharat Ratna, including the Bharat Ratna and the Nishan-e-Pakistan. It's not here in my house. To Gujarat Vidyapeeth, again in Ahmedabad. It's in a small room in Ahmedabad for whoever wants to go see it. If I make as his great grandson, if I make a demand that a public institution or an airport should be named after him, that would be probably the greatest disservice for everything that he stood for in his life and after his life. Would it probably give me political brownie points? Maybe. But is that something on a matter of principle that I would want to do? Absolutely not. And that is the reason that I would not want to do that. I think that would be a great disservice to his legacy. If the government were to decide, of course, to name the airport after him or to name any other institution after him, by all means, they're free to do it. I would welcome it and I would support it. But as his great-grandson, I would not make that request. It's not an issue that I would pick up. It's not something that I would fight for. It's not something that I would rile up people in my community to say, why isn't this named after him? He was prime minister from Surat. You must do this. This is what you should do. It may be politically incorrect, but on principle, I'm convinced that it's something that I will not do.
So this brings me to one of your favorite quotes. I remember reading it. "You have to do your own growing, no matter how tall your grandfather was," by Abe Lincoln. So do you feel the pressure of taking forward the legacy of your great grandfather?
Absolutely not. I haven't joined politics to take his legacy or anybody's legacy forward. I am here because I believe that I can contribute to the country through a political system. I believe that this is, for me, the best way that I can contribute to my country, that I can contribute to policy, that I can work with individuals from different walks of life. And the day that I think that I'm unable to do that is the day that I'll stop doing what I'm doing. But that is why I'm here. I'm not here to take anybody's legacy forward.
So like when you were talking about how family name, how a lot of things have been named after one family in the nation, institutions and whatnot. That brings me to my next question, sir. How important do you think is an ideology and relatively fair advancement opportunities for cohesion in a political party? Because one thing that I personally admire is the student wings. If we notice the student wings, there is one student wing which does not have any on their websites or anything. There's no political leader as such. The student wing has aspired for students' rights, and on the other hand, we have another student wing which prominently displays the party leader on their website and everything. ABVP never does that. On the other hand, we have NSUI who does. So this is something that has been on my mind, and I'd like to ask.
Political party without an ideology is just an SPV to grab power or to make money. There's absolutely no other reason why. There's absolutely no other reason why you would be a political party. I'm quite clear on that. And if you think about it as well, you'll come pretty much to that same conclusion. Or if a political party is bereft of any ideology, of any thought, of any vision, besides the fact that they want to form government, then what is the purpose of it? Right? There has to be a larger purpose to a political party than just sarkar banani hai. So that is of course on ideology. On relative advancement, I've said this at a couple of forums, and I'll say it here as well. In India, a statistic that goes unnoticed is that we have 1,300 registered political parties in India. Almost every second person has formed a political party. And if you look at from across the country, besides the BJP, almost every single one is sort of run by a family. You have Omar Abdullah and Farooq Abdullah in the north, of course, relatively irrelevant today. You have in the south, after Karunanidhi, you had Stalin that took over the party. In Maharashtra, in the MVA itself, you have Uddhavji and you have Aditya Thackeray, and then you have Sharad Pawar. Between Supriya Suleji and Ajit Dada, I'm sure they'll fight amongst themselves, and one of them will become president of the party. And the reason that I mention this is the best way to test whether you can advance in an organization, not just a political party, is if you look at succession. Even in a company, if you look at whether only the promoter is going to be the director, MD, CMD, CEO, and only his family members are going to be directors and controllers of the company, then you know how that company runs. With the same way with a political party as well. Over here, with all other political parties, that there's a glass ceiling on top, that the family will finally, that one individual of the family will finally run it. With the BJP, I ask this question often. After Rajnath Singh ji, you did not know that Amit Bhai would become party president. After you're both political enthusiasts and now, of course, graduates as well. After Amit Bhai, I'm sure even if you had guessed, you would not have known that Nadda ji would have become president of the party. And I can bet good amount of money on the fact that none of us know who the party president after Nadda ji is going to be. And to my mind, as a small karyakarta in a large party, it gives me immense amount of confidence. It gives me immense amount of confidence and faith to know the fact that there isn't a glass ceiling on top of my head. That one day, if I work hard enough, and if the party believes in my abilities, that I too have a shot at becoming president of the largest political party in the entire world. And to my mind, and I am an aspirational young person. Most of India is young aspirational India. They don't want to know that Sethi bethe hai to unko hi milega. No, why should he get it? I want to get it. I want to work hard, and I want a position that I deserve. So in the BJP, I truly believe it is the only party that truly allows advancement on the basis of merit, where you don't have an artificial ceiling on your head, and it isn't only theory. You can see it time and again being implemented in action. So it was a relatively complex question. I hope I answered what you set out to ask.
You did a wonderful job of fleshing it out. So Devansh and I, we met in Assam, and when we first met, we bonded over music. And one of the few things that she told him to, that whenever you decide to run for elections, campaign on the basis of your music choices. You have a very
what are your music choices? I'm very curious to know.
Devansh, tell us about your music choices.
He's just hyping me up. So I really like to listen to a lot of I listen to a lot of Gujarati music. I listen to I like Indian indie music and a little bit of blues and rock.
Hey, nice. Tell us about you're an indie boy, don't Gujarati music and all.
I have it.
What indie music do you like?
So while I was in college, I used to go to NN7 weekend. I am a good old Damien Rice, Keaton Henson, Keaton Henson boy, Sufjan Stevens. So I love them. I listen to them, and that's how he introduced me to pop, and I introduced him to indie music. That's how we became friends. We met in the Assam election campaign, and that's how it was.
I'm currently listening to on loop. There's this great band in Chennai called Scrat. They make some great music. I discovered them some time ago, and they released an album as well. I think about a year ago, but I just came across that album. Some great work. I think there are great Indian bands that make some fantastic music as well. So maybe one day we'll sit down and we'll listen to some music as well.
Jamming session. We need a jamming session is what we need.
Yes.
So are you a metalhead?
So then we can probably... Sorry, I said if you are great. So I'm a metalhead as well. Actually, I listen to a lot of music, but I play primarily rock and metal. So for sure, we'll have a jamming session.
Lovely.
So according to a survey, only 27% of Indians are known to be financial literate. Financial literacy is something that is desperately required in the nation. So how do you think the youth should go about this? And do you think there's a need for a policy from the government's end to educate the youth on this?
The financial literacy, finance as per se, is something that particularly interests me. I'll give you some statistics. Right, by 2025, 71% of all of India's payments will be made digital. Over 1.5 crore people joined the stock market this year, retail investors. Our per capita income has gone from $1,000 in 1990 to $7,000 in 2018 or 19. HDFC is going to issue their public statement, 3 to 5 lakh credit cards every month from now. They recently had a ban, that ban got lifted. And if you go to Zomato or Swiggy now, you actually have this option where you can get a 1-month loan to buy a 30 rupee McDonald's burger. It's something that I discovered recently as well. It's called Lazy Pay or Pay Later or whatever have you. And I found this extremely interesting because all you have to do is put your mobile number and your email address with no other details, and you get a loan. Agreed, it may be 50 rupees, 100 rupees, or 1,000 rupees. But this sets an important trend that India is not used to. India is a savings economy, a savings culture. That I grew up in a house where if you earn 100 rupees, 98 of those rupees are to be saved. 1 rupee is 2 rupees are to be kept or to be spent at best. And pretty much most of India till this generation, at least I would imagine, lives broadly by this culture. It may not be 98, maybe 70, maybe 50. But with the advent of technology and with the advent of you to get a quick loan, just putting your mobile number in, you don't want to get into a culture or a system where you become debt-ridden. A problem that the US greatly suffers with. In fact, a majority of students in the US suffer with student loans because the rates are so high for pretty much their entire life, and also because of the credit cycle over there, it keeps urging you to borrow and to take money that you haven't earned. From the government's perspective, the RBI of course launched a national strategy for financial education, and like every RBI document, it will probably be read by securities lawyers and pretty much no one else. What I think is important, like you rightly said, only 5% of India is literate, but less than 25% financial. Why should it have financial literacy? Earning money, losing money, spending money, or investing money is not something only that rich people do. That you just earn a salary and put it into FD and that's it. Financial literacy, I think, is extremely important that we must, it's that must be done. Given that the NAP is also has come out now, and of course, freedoms have to be passed. I think it's something that is extremely.
So I'm still a student right now. I'm in my 5th year of law school, actually. And I study in GNLU, Gujarat National Law University. Yeah. So when it comes to financial literacy, I have this very interesting concept which I adhere by, and that's retail therapy. I don't save.
Exactly
but if I do, what exactly? Clothes, definitely. I think one thing I realized that once you start getting towards the end of your law school, you decide that fashion is a thing now. You have to start dressing more appropriately. If you need to meet people outside of law school, then just metal t-shirts and rock t-shirts won't do the trick. So you have to buy a little more expensive clothes. And what else? Food. I think food is the biggest expense, which I guess all college people.
So have you ever taken a quick loan to buy any of this?
Just once.
From later.
I did. So what these platforms do is, if you use LazyPay, you get a discount. So I remember using LazyPay just that once. I was very broke at that point in time, so I remember using LazyPay for that exact purpose. You have to pay that back too. I mean, most students don't realize that you take a loan, you've got to pay it back. This is not the udhari which you take from from your batchmates. You've got to pay that back. Canteen ki udhari nahi hai.
Glad to hear the credit score. It's only a few people that may use the credit app that were forced to figure out what their credit score was before they could download it, know what a credit score is. But that's something that's extremely important, because you don't want to, with more easy access for money, and I'm extremely confident that we will become a wealthy country over the next few years, and with double-digit GDP. That's only going to be driven by greater amount of money in the hands of the average citizen. So that money shouldn't go from a culture of only saving, like you said, udhari. And in a group of just the 3 of us, if one person has already taken a loan from directly availing of credit. But unlike with a lot of people where it gets introduced in college, I don't think it's something that should get introduced in college. I think as a concept, the concept of money, the concept of making money, the concept of investing money and saving money, I think as a concept should exist in school, and not just in college.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you look at how, most of my peers spend money, right? There is no structure to it, right? Now, going forward, I think there are some YouTubers. I think a lot of us watched Bhatt. We launched this series on financial risk and investments, and the idea being that you have to structure. You have to leave some out. You have to spend some money, of course, then leave some money out for savings and invest the rest. I don't think a lot of us follow that format, and I think that's really, really required. You need to start from a really early stage when you start getting money from your grandparents, and special events. You need to start saving that. And I think that's where we can all get started. So I guess we're talking about NEP also, right? So Devansh, you had a question regarding NEP from what I remember. I think we can move on to that, right?
Sorry, I'll just end this by saying there's a great book by Monica Halan on how you should save money. I strongly urge you, and whenever this gets published, whoever watches it, to please go ahead and buy it. I've gifted that book to more people than I can remember.
The link to the book will be in the description, guys. So do check it out.
My question to you was, So recently there was a lot of hullabaloo about the existing history curriculum in schools and colleges. And now with the introduction of the NEP and the recent revamp of the BA history course, what other corrective measures do you think we should take to rectify the same? That a lot of the history that we study has been portrayed in a very wrong light, rather than what it is. And it's time that we set our history right. So I personally, because I come from a family of Gujarati's, and I am a religious person as who I am. And therefore, I took to reading Mahabharata and Ramayana and the real versions, and the version that we saw in our history books, or rather the heroics of past, like Amar Chitra Katha was a way for me to get to know who my ancestors were. I didn't read about that in my history books, and that is something that I feel is wrong. That there's a need for it to change.
I agree with you 100%, Devansh. This specific subject irritates me. I'll tell you why it irritates me. It irritates me because history as a subject, or rather the curriculum, is across the world. India is not unique, but India is unique in one way, is that if you read textbooks in India, you're not given the Indian perspective or the Indian perspective of what happened, or a historical truth or a historical fact. You're given the Mughal perspective of what happened, or you're given the British perspective of what happened. You can be on the left side of a debate, you can be on the right side of the debate, or you can be on somewhere in the middle. But I don't think anything stops you from looking at history from the prism of what your countrymen or what Indians looked at it as. And also, our history is far from Mahabharata and Ramayana and anything to do with even with Shivaji or Maharana Pratap or whatever it may be. Why is it that I know that Nehru was called Chacha Nehru and his birthday was on 14th November and he wore a rose and he celebrated as Children's Day? That's not history. It adds nothing to my life. I mean, I'm sure that even Nehru, despite the fact that I may have my differences and I don't agree with his ideology, I'm sure there's something better than that you could possibly put in history books as opposed to that. And so, my request to people on the other side of this debate, not on the right side, on the wrong side of this debate, to just come together to only do one thing, which is please allow Indian history to be told from the Indian side of how history unfurled, as opposed to from the British side or from the Mughal side or whoever else. The fact that they ruled India for a specific period of time is fact. Glorification of that is not fact. The fact that they may have brought in certain changes or may have put in certain processes into place is fact. Glorification of that is not fact. And I'm happy that the Honorable Prime Minister, as a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, has asked for 10,000 stories of freedom fighters from across the country, from every state, to be highlighted and to bring to life these stories as a part of this celebration. So I'm happy that is happening.
That's actually very true. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of different schools of history. Just getting into school, you think there's the history, right? But once you reach, at least when I reached law school, I realized that there are multiple schools of history as well. So you have the subaltern school, you have the Marxist school of history, the index school of history, and most of the history which is peddled in law schools turns out to be the Marxist version, because that's sort of the default version which is told. So I was recently reading Vikram Sampath's book on Savarkar. Great book, absolutely lovely. So the volume 2 just came out. I would really recommend anyone who's listening to this to check out the book. So Savarkar is really vilified in traditional media, is not given the due respect, or just the correct facts aren't stated. It's only after reading the book I realized that a man is just not in black or the white. It's all gray usually, and what makes them is a collective of what they have done throughout their lives. And yeah, I mean, he has done a great service to his nation, I'd say, in what he has managed to do. And you can't get to know that from traditional sources of history, which is sort of propagated in schools and throughout.
Currently, that's the point that I was trying to make. Marxist or the Marxist form of presenting history is always a winner and a loser. And if you go to the hub of Marxism, even in China, it's nationalism that is taught. It's not Marxism, even if it's through a Marxist prism. Chinese history is always the victor, regardless of who may have ruled China or what may have happened in their history. It's the same with Japan as well. If you look at, like what Devansh was saying, if you look at Indian history or the way that Indian history is presented or the way that Indian culture is presented, it's always great. If you read the Mahabharata, it is great. It isn't. It doesn't come from this Western philosophy of there is David and there is Goliath, and there is someone big and someone small, and there is someone who overpowered them and took over them with all his passion and all his might. That is not how Indian history is presented. And unfortunately, most Indians that go through, me included, through the formalized process, just learn this form of history, which is, like I said, is very unfortunate.
So it's quite interesting you brought up Japan in the middle. So a lot of people don't know. It's an interesting fact, and since I would like to bring it up since you are a lawyer as well. So a lot of people, it's not really discussed in our history books as well, but there was this Indian judge in the Tokyo trials. His name was Radha Vinod Pal, and he was one of the judges in the Tokyo trials, which was sort of parallel to the Nuremberg trials. So the version which happened in Japan, he was one of the judges there. Hardly brought up, but he's one of the reasons why one of the bases on which diplomatic relations are built were really good after World War II between India and Japan. Like interesting tidbit there.
But talking about history again, it's a shame that when we learned about freedom fighters, I did not know who Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was until I finished my school, came to junior college, and I started exploring history on my own, which is an absolute shame. I did not know that my city of Vadodara has a sister city in Mysore. The roads leading up to the palaces both ways are named after the kings. That is something that I learned after coming to junior college, and I wish I knew that before, because that is something that's a thing of pride for me. That my city, my nation is so well connected. There were friendly relations back then and everything. So that's something that I really would like to see change.
With the rollout of the NEP, of course, the curriculums have not yet. It's going to be some time before the curriculums come out. But like I said, from it's a very political. It's a very hot political subject across the world. The way that it's taught. That's my hope, that even people not on the right side of history, or who don't like to look at the right side of history, just look at it at least from the prism of India, not from the prism of that India was always governed by someone else. No, India has always been a great country. There's a blip in between. That's about it. So hopefully that.
So, I had another question, and it's a slight deviation. Again, from the legal perspective. So, what do you think about judicial activism? And do you think I mean, of course, it's good to a certain extent, but do you think in the long term, it could be a little detrimental to the goals which we want to pursue as a civilizational nation?
So, Kanish, you're a lawyer, right? Judicial activism as a concept is accepted internationally, as long as it is, within certain limits. It's not an alien concept. The challenge is judicial overreach. If you look at the basic structure argument, and you look at the silos with which, or rather the pillars upon which our constitution is read. It's absolutely clear. The legislature legislates and the judiciary adjudicates. There isn't an overlap between it. There is almost no situation in which the judiciary would legislate in theory. Unfortunately, that in the name of judicial activism sometimes happens. Even that, to my mind, is not the biggest concern. And I just completed 10 years at the bar, and I would say this is the greatest amount of humility. If you ask the average person, they have the most amount of faith in the courts in India. The courts have been beyond reproach for across, multiple political parties, lots of political upheaval across history in India. There was a recent judgment where the Honorable Supreme Court took so moto cognizance of the Kanwar Yatra in UP, but turned a blind eye to Bakrid the following week in Kerala, all in the middle of a pandemic. And what happens with that is, which I think is the true danger, which is in the minds of the average individual, it casts in their mind a political color to the highest court in the land, and that is something that I think is dangerous. Only because of the amount of faith that the average citizen today has in the courts. The minute you attribute some sort of political color to judgments or to decisions, then I think that is extremely detrimental, because the judiciary has always been an extremely important pillar for not just our constitution, for our democracy, for our rights. So I wouldn't really speak about activism as much, but I think that is what would be a challenge.
That makes sense. So similar questions on similar lines. So right now we see a lot of big tech companies. So they use their content agnostic platform status, and then they get away with it by censoring a lot of content on a very regular basis. Happens quite a bit, quite a number of times. You see this on Twitter, on YouTube, practically every platform. So do you think it's better for the government to interfere in this regard, or is it better to let them govern themselves as they are, let the status quo be?
So there's an undisputed fact that data is the new gold, right? You had the gold rush in the 1900s. You have the data rush today, and the only place that has valuable data. You have a lot of people in Africa. You don't have valuable data there. You have the most valuable data in the world is currently in India. So the gold rush is really in India. And on to the east of India, you have Bhatt, you have Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. And on the west of India, you have, on the western side, you have FANG, you have Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. They aren't, they're large companies that exert a tremendous amount of influence, whose net worths are probably more than a couple of European countries combined, and have a tremendous amount of influence. Regulation is not a bad thing. I would disagree with you. Regulation is not interference. Interference would be different. Regulating something is not necessarily a bad thing. Red tapeism is a bad thing. Regulation isn't. If you look at the stock markets today, they're a very well-regulated system. If you look at real estate now, there's a process of regulation that is coming into that as well with RERA. The financial systems with banks, etc., again, is a fairly well-regulated process. So I don't think regulation is bad. If you look at the attitude of some of these intermediaries, they want to hide behind the fact that they're only a platform and not a publisher. But at the same time, they will ad hoc ban whoever they feel violates some random term of theirs. It goes against every natural justice principle that exists. They have most countries have let them self-regulate over the last 6 or 7 years. But despite the fact that the former president, he was president, he stepped down as president. Donald Trump stepped down as president, and all of these guys overnight decided to ban him. Isn't that a tremendous violation of free speech from supposedly the oldest democracy in the entire world? if you do not have regulation in any form, I do not believe that it would be in the interest of citizens or the country. Privacy is a very important, very sensitive issue. Data is a very important, very sensitive issue. And unless you have regulation around it, it is my true belief that all our gold will get stolen and our gold will be exploited. And I don't think that is something that should happen. And the last thing that I will add to this is that you look at the absolutely distasteful attitude of Twitter to appoint one grievance officer in compliance with the law. It shows that these bodies don't want to be, that will not self-regulate. So what choice but to regulate them? I don't look at it as a bad thing at all. I think it's extremely important.
So I guess we can wrap it up with just one final question. Thank Madhukeshwar ji for being with us. I mean, made time for us, and it's early morning. It's for 10:30. I set it to 9.
It's not early morning. If you're a law student and you've stayed up all night, then it's early morning. Otherwise, it's not early morning. But I'll tell you guys this. When I was a student, I was an over Ensu cutlet, and I had an organization that I'd started, and I would bang on every single door to try and get people to give me time to come and speak at an event, or to write a foreword, or to do whatever. And it's very challenging. People just don't agree to do it. And I promised myself that if someone is doing something, if a student is doing something for the first time, then I'll say no. And then I will not say no. So that is why when Devansh reached out to me, I said yes. And it's a principle that I choose to live by, so that the younger version of myself will be more forgiving of the older version of me. And so that's why I'm happy to be your first guest on your new podcast.
Absolutely.
It was an honor having you with us. Thank you so much. It was wonderful interacting with us.
I guess I can wrap it up. But I think it was a great session. Great having you on board today, and it was a lovely session. I think we can, and thank you so much, Madhukeshwar ji, for being with us. We'll call it a wrap. And guys, do check out. We'll be on all other platforms here on Spotify, Apple Music, or any of your other favorite streaming platforms. So if audio is a thing, do check us out there as well. And just wait for our next episode as well. We hope to do at least 2 a month. If we don't get lazy, sorry about that. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Yes. And that was it, guys. With Tark. Thank you so much.